A penny saved is a penny earned. A penny for your thoughts. These phrases might not be used as much in the near future. Stay tuned to find out what is going to happen to America's beloved penny. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. We are Central Florida's longest running radio program, coming to you on a host of radio stations throughout Central Florida. We are also one of the top 25 financial planning podcasts on the World Wide Web with over 47,000 downloads of our program. Be sure to subscribe to our program on your favorite social media or podcast platform. If you need any help finding us, just go to our website, nelsonfinancialplanning.com. On the front page in the right-hand corner, see a variety of icons. Click on the one that you like to use. That'll take you directly to our channel, and you'll be connected. You can go there and watch this show and other shows we've done over the last few years, always available. As you can tell, your normal host, Joel Garris, is off this week. He will be back next week with the next episode of Dollars and Cents. Got a couple of guest hosts today. My name is Rob Field. I am with Nelson Financial Planning. I'm a certified financial fiduciary. I'm also a National Social Security advisor. To my left is Christina Lamb, also a certified financial fiduciary and an IRS enrolled agent. Good morning, Christina.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good. I always enjoy getting a chance to do the show with you. We've got some good stuff coming up. I think we got a fun show for the listeners this week.
Absolutely. On this week's show, we're going to cover the 6 must-have milestones to address before you retire. Also, very excited, Rob and I have come up with our newest acronym referring to savings. And then followed by a brief synopsis of the one big beautiful tax bill that recently passed in the House.
Yeah, looking forward. That'll be very enjoyable. You know, we used those acronyms a couple of years ago. We came out with budget, and we took that word and kind of gave each letter a little bit of a emphasis to kind of help people understand how budget works. Very popular. People referred to it. So now we're going to take the word savings and use that in the exact same way. So I started off talking about the penny, and we're going to talk a little bit about what might be happening with the penny itself. So let's not keep everybody waiting. Let's jump right in.
Absolutely. So last week, there was an announcement of the death of the penny, and that was after 233 years of service of our beloved penny. The Treasury Department said that they're going to be phasing out the penny as a currency.
That's true. After a lifespan as nearly as long as the nation itself, the U.S. Mint has ordered its last batch of blanks to be used to mint those penny coins, and the Treasury expects to stop putting any new pennies into circulation early next year.
Did you know that it costs nearly 4 cents to make a penny, which is only worth 1 cent?
I guess it makes sense to discontinue something that is worth less than its actual production cost, right? So pennies were born out of the Coinage Act of 1792, which established a mint in Philadelphia to start producing national coins to replace those that were made in individual states. The following March, 11,178 copper cents rolled into circulation, each larger than a modern quarter.
I can't believe a penny being the size of a quarter. It seems so clunky as it is, coins and heavy. I know last year we traveled a little bit and we were using another currency, and it was just awkward dealing with all the change and the different coins, and there were some bills as well, but you don't realize how much you've gotten used to kind of just using your credit cards or quicker forms of payment than cash.
Sure.
But anyways, it wasn't until 1909 that President Lincoln's face was put on the penny in honor of his 100th birthday, and that is the version of the penny that we all know and love today. A turning point for the 1 cent coin came in 2006, and that's when pennies started costing more than their face value to make because of the rise in the cost of copper and zinc.
Now, once produced, most pennies actually don't really go anywhere at all. Some 60% of actively circulating coins, or as much as $14 billion in coins, just sits in a coin jar. And that's according to the Federal Reserve. The nickel, however, is no money maker for the government either. The Mint says each one costs nearly 14 cents to make. Their days are going to be probably numbered also.
So I have a great penny story for everyone. My dad, who's 85 years old, he's been a coin collector all his life. And every Friday he visits his local branch. Yes, he goes inside and he buys a box of pennies. Now, a box of pennies consists of 50 rolls of pennies, and it's quite heavy. But as his hobby, he sits there and he goes through all the pennies every week, and he's looking for certain mints and certain dates, double dies, things of that nature. I don't know what he's going to do once he won't be able to do that with his free time, but that is certainly his hobby in retirement.
It's a good hobby, and based on what's going on, he may be in luck for a little while because the value of these pennies may go up if they're discontinued, supply and demand. You're probably going to see at one point pennies will become kind of a collectible since they wouldn't be available. It might be something like trading cards, baseball trading cards, or even maybe like the Beanie Baby fad where people are just loading up on different types of pennies just in case.
Yeah, I bet you this last mint, this last year, because it'll probably be a limited batch, may be worth even more.
You would think so. So Christina mentioned a little bit about we're going to take a look at some milestones you might want to address before you actually jump into retirement. So we're going to take a look at each one of those and kind of explain why we think they're important.
So most people spend countless hours planning on their retirement before the big day finally arrives. After all, it's not easy to be completely comfortable and confident in that decision to exit the workplace because you've been working for so many years. It's one of the biggest decisions you'll make in your lifetime.
And that decision, it really can be a scary one. So these 6 milestones that are going to be reviewed before you retire, we want to address each one of these, and we think it'll kind of put maybe any concerns or worries people have going into retirement, maybe put it at ease because you've kind of got a checklist of some things that you might want to take a look at first. After all, we found that people with a formal financial plan had 2, almost 4 times more wealth than somebody when they entered retirement who had not made the plan. And this came from a study we saw from T. Rowe Price. So what we're going to find out is it's very crucial to plan ahead as you address your retirement.
So our first milestone is a comprehensive income and expense plan. One of the biggest concerns that retirees face is whether they're going to have enough money to survive through their whole entire retirement without a paycheck. And basically that's living on a fixed income. So now there's no exact formula to deciding, how your income and expenses may work and whether you have enough or not, but many financial advisors cite the rule of 25, which states that you can expect to retire comfortably if your assets are worth 25 times your annual expenses. However, this is just a rule of thumb, and it doesn't guarantee that you will not spend more than you should spend each year, nor will your investments generate as much income as they should. Here at Nelson Financial Planning, we like to determine these figures by assuming a 4% annual withdrawal rate from your investments. And then we add in your Social Security payments and possibly pension payments if you're lucky enough to have one of those. Backing into the number helps ensure that you will not run out of money. You just have to keep a check on your expenses. So most clients who have saved moderately over the years find that they're pleasantly surprised by the level of income that they can generate from their investments.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very important to take a look at that as you're going into retirement. The next milestone that we want to help people sort of understand is debt elimination. And so what we find out is that if you're carrying debt and you don't have income coming in from your work, from your normal employment, that's a reduction in income, maybe an increase in cost. So it doesn't really make sense, and you definitely don't want to take away from any fun you could have in retirement by being burdened with debt. So you don't want your income and expense plan to be weighed down on payments from purchases you made a while back. So you really try to clean up that debt immediately. That's got to be an important goal, important milestone. Saw a recent survey. It was provided by the organization National Debt Relief, and it noted that 72% of Americans over the age of 55 have accumulated large amounts of debt, with many of them stating that it held them back from actually having a successful retirement. So with this in mind, you should plan to eliminate or at least minimize your non-mortgage debt before you retire. I like to emphasize non-mortgage because at some point when in retirement, you're still going to need to live somewhere. Now you can rent or you can buy, but you might find out that a better investment solution for you personally would be to stay with that mortgage versus renting. So we're going to wrap up this segment, take a short break. We will be back in just a minute. Stick with us for more on Dollars and Cents. Christina and I have been talking a little bit about what we think is important to address before you enter in retirement. We call them milestones or must-haves that need to be reviewed. I was just wrapping up the fact that your living expense is something that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Compare your options versus a mortgage or renting. We're going to go on to the next one. Christina, what do you got?
So our next milestone is a healthcare plan. Now, we don't just mean having an actual healthcare plan. It's having a plan to pay for all of your healthcare and medical expenses. One of the reasons many seniors have debt is because of unexpected medical expenses that incur. The National Debt Relief Survey found that roughly 17% of seniors carry an average of $9,144 in debt due to outstanding medical bills alone. So don't underestimate just how expensive medical bills can be for our seniors in their later years. Another important part of healthcare to consider is if you retire before age 65 and you cannot get on Medicare, and it's the actual cost of healthcare insurance itself. You will need to budget the expense of medical insurance into your retirement plans, which is probably nowhere near what you were paying for health insurance when you were with an employer. Insurance can run nearly $1,000 for individuals to $2,000 per month for a couple, which is a huge expense, probably one of your bigger bills for most people. This one fact can sway many folks from retiring early. So planning ahead and making that work into your retirement budget can help retirement go much smoother and possibly help you retire early.
That's definitely a good point. I notice a lot in meetings where clients come in and they've run what they think is going to be all the numbers necessary to have successful retirement. They're like, I know what my Social Security is going to be. I know what my pension is going to be. I have made a budget. And they forget that their budget before, when they were working, Medicare, the medical insurance was already covered by, it was taken out of their paycheck before they even hit hit their bank. And so when we remind them that you're now not part of a large group where you get a nice discount on your medical insurance, you're now going to be an individual, underwritten as an individual, $1,000 for one person. Most people are married, $2,000 a month. Obviously, that's a big hit on a budget if you did not plan on that.
Absolutely.
The next milestone that we wanted to talk about is your estate plan. So you got to kind of decide, what do you want to happen to your assets during retirement and then when you pass away? It's important that your goal for the balance of your estate be addressed early in retirement. Do you want it to continue to grow, or will you deplete some of it to generate income? Have you specified where the estate should flow to? Specific family members or some type of organization? That being the case, have it in writing, make sure it's accessible to everybody, and then kind of let people know this is where I'm keeping my estate plan options, and also review it from time to time. Make sure that it's still accurate as your needs change or as your retirement changes.
I think that's a great point, Rob. A lot of times we see folks who haven't looked at their trust or estate documents in many years. And unfortunately, life changes, or fortunately for some, however you look at it. So what you wanted 20 years ago may not be what you want now. So it's always important to look those documents over and just make sure they're still accurate, along with checking all of your beneficiaries on any of your accounts. Periodically, you always want to make sure that they're up to date. Maybe one account was missed or something didn't go through, whatever the case may be. You always want to look at that stuff. So our next milestone is mental health and a social plan. And sounds kind of weird at first, but if you think about it, after decades of having a career or being in a certain business field, many retirees, their identity is often wrapped up in their work. And most people spend too much time working and raising their kids and spend very little time nurturing their own personal relationships outside of work. So this is a recipe for loneliness and boredom in retirement. In fact, 36% of seniors said that they've considered going back to work because they are just bored. And we definitely see that here in the office. Many folks will get a part-time job or volunteer, do many different things. This is why it's so important to create a social and mental plan before you retire. Don't leave your job unless you have a good idea of what you want to do with your time and who you want to spend it with. It is really something you need to take some time to consider because retirement can last many years. So you may want to consider traveling or whatever your hobbies are, maybe something that involves exercise to keep you active and in shape, like pickleball, or maybe if you're fortunate enough to have grandkids and family, you can spend more time with them.
Those are good points. It's so important that people understand, okay, I've been working for all these years. I'm tired of working, so I'm going to retire. And it sounds like all I've done is I'm going to relieve some stress and give myself some free time. But you mentioned that loneliness and the boredom. We hear that a lot where our clients come in and they've worked hard, and obviously working the hours they were doing, they want to reduce it in some form or fashion. But it's not always, let's just stop working completely. And which kind of leads us into our next milestone that we want to address, and that's sort of a lifestyle trial run, meaning what do you think you'll actually do day by day when you retire? And so you really kind of need to, before you fully retire, kind of take a little mini vacation is what we call it. We say, okay, pretend like you're not going to work. So you're not going to, during this little mini vacation, you're not going to call into the office, you're not going to check emails, you're just going to do whatever you think you would do while you're retired. So what we say on this mini vacation is, it's a trial run. Pretend like I'm retired, and then think about, what are you going to do every day? Is it comfortable? Is it fun? Would you be bored? Would you be lonely? I certainly, here at our office, we kind of interact with everybody a lot. So if I were to retire, or somebody like myself were to retire, you're not going to have that interaction on a daily basis. That's the loneliness part you were talking about. So one idea I always have is you take a piece of paper and you make a list. You say, okay, let's pretend like it's Monday. And instead of working, what am I going to do on this Monday? I'm going to get up, what time, go where, how long, fill out that list. And then at some point you're going to say, okay, what does it look like compared to my normal work day? Does that list of retirement activities that I just made, is it rewarding? Is it filling up my day? Is this what I want to do on a Monday? Then what about Tuesday? What about Wednesday? So you have to kind of think about that in any way that you can and be prepared. And by doing so, you may find that you need to kind of adjust the list of what you will do in retirement. Maybe you need to add more things, maybe take up a new hobby, maybe buy a boat, something like that. Or if when you run that list and you're being honest with yourself, you're like, you know what, this doesn't sound like a very fun day or a fun week, maybe you want to readjust the actual date that you retire.
I think that's interesting. And we touched on another story in previous radio shows about folks who are getting close to retirement but not quite there. And they actually use that month, take a month off and try the trial run, and they do that for a couple of years, and a few things happen. Some of them realize they don't want to retire yet, and some of them realize they may want to retire sooner. So I think it really depends on every individual personality to see, where you stand and what are you comfortable with doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so important that in retirement that you look at all of the different aspects. A lot of people just don't think about what they're actually going to do. They just know they're not going to work, and that sounds nice, not to have to get up, but you're going to get over that pretty quick. So we shared these milestones, kind of help people step back, think about, what will I do in retirement? What are the things I'm going to focus on? Do I have an estate plan lined up? Do I know what I'm going to do? Am I prepared for medical expenses? And so what we feel like is if you pre-plan and address these 6 different milestones before you fully retire, you should be on your way to a smoother and probably a more successful retirement plan. And that's our goal, is to help you and to help others have a successful retirement plan.
So next up, we have our savings acronym. Rob and I came up with this acronym to help people learn about all the different things investors would consider when coming up with a savings budget.
We had a lot of fun with that budget. We did that actually a couple of years ago. July 9th, 2023 is the air date of when we kind of presented budget. And we said, okay, we're going to take the word budget and we're going to give each letter sort of an emphasis to help our listeners think about what would make a successful budget. And so that acronym worked out very well. And so we said, let's do the same thing for savings. When we get back from this break, we're going to kind of summarize budget, lead into savings, and kind of help come up with some ideas to help you have a more successful savings plan. Stay tuned. More coming up on Dollars and Cents. On this segment, we're going to talk about a new acronym that we have developed, Christina and I, called Built on Savings. Kind of a part two of what we did with budgets a couple of years ago. We said budgets, if you break it down, can help you sort of understand the different parts. What we said was B was for balance, keeping a balance between different things. U for understanding your actual goals and what you've got. D for debt. We're always going to talk about how important that is. Your goals change, so your budget might also change. We had E for expectations. What do you think is going to happen versus reality? T for transition, because for your budget will move you from one part of your life to another. And then S for solutions. How do you actually fix any problems or address any issues that might be coming up that would affect your budget? So Christina, you and I got together. We said budgets worked. Yep. What's the next thing? We said, well, once you budget, you need to do a little savings, and we kind of built that acronym.
So we came up with savings, and on the surface, savings can seem like a simple thing to do, but if you look at it and set it aside, it can be complex because there are a lot of different options available and different ways to save, different things to save for, how you save, that come into play with a good savings plan. So we took each letter in the word to help come up with key points to help you generate a successful savings plan, starting with the letter S, which is stay the course. Avoid emotional decisions and stick with the plan.
We thought that was important. Of course, it worked out well for the letter S, but what we were trying to think here is you got to set your plan. Then you're going to implement that plan, and then you've got to stick to and review that plan. Which we thought that would basically be set your goals by defining clear financial objectives. The next thing would be implement that plan that you have now taken the time to design, and then stick with it and continue to monitor it, but don't let it get swayed. Now, the reason I bring that up is a lot of our clients will remember, investors in general, when the tariffs first hit weeks back and the market dropped dramatically, a lot of people suddenly wanted to change their investment objective, change what their long-term goals were, because they were sure that this little episode was going to create a problem and they wanted to avoid it. It didn't take long before the tariffs reduced, and then suddenly the market rebounded right back. Anybody that panicked and got out, changed their objective in the short term and got away from what their long-term true objective was, kind of suffered because they missed out on some of the growth. That's why we back away and we say, make sure that you're not making a short-term mistake that's going to affect your long-term decision.
That's a great point, and I think that was definitely an emotional side of things. There's also the physical side of things to veer off course. Maybe you see something sparkly and pretty, or you like to shop, or you like to travel, and you slip up, and maybe you spend a little bit more than you're supposed to. Show yourself some grace if you do that. Get back on course and stick to your budget.
Definitely.
So next up in our savings acronym is A, and it is for automate contributions, making savings consistent and effortless.
Right. So we like the idea of automating it so that it's not kind of haphazard, wait to the end of the month, kind of see what do you got left over, and then maybe try to save some of that. If you automate it, you're almost like creating it as a bill. You're saying, okay, I'm going to build into my budget, which we've talked about before, the ability to save, and I'm going to pay myself first. I'm going to put myself on the top of the list of things where I'm allocating money. So instead of saying I'm going to pay all these bills and then figure out what I want to do, I want to go out to dinner this month? Is there something left over? Maybe it gets over into the investing side, put it at the top of the list. That's what we want to say. And that'll make your increases look good too, because at some point, more money will be coming in. Maybe it's a pay raise, maybe it's a bonus. You should take the same attitude with that. Any excess money, any pay raise, immediately increase the amount that's going to savings also. So, a lot of times somebody will have a year-end review at the end of the year. You're getting a 5% increase. Increase your savings by 5% also. Find out a great place to put it and follow it along.
I think that's a great point. And the same goes, maybe you get a bonus at the end of the year. take a portion of that bonus and ramp up some of your savings. And I always say treat yourself a little bit too. You got to treat yourself sometimes, because if you save, you might get overwhelmed. So, budget your bonus. Take a little bit for yourself and save some of that. So this is where I think, budgeting really comes in when you think about your savings plan. So I like to treat my savings as different buckets in my monthly bills, and making my savings contribution a monthly bill helps to keep it a consistent plan for me, and it helps make me save each and every month. And what's helped me even more is automating those contributions to where I have them automatically come out of my account, just like I would in my bill pay, for example, to make sure I'm saving every month. And I think by doing this and utilizing the bucket system, you can divvy your savings up into different categories. So for example, retirement is technically a savings vehicle that you need to plan for. You also have your emergency fund, which is going to be a little different from your retirement. And then you may have a miscellaneous account. Like for me, I like to travel. I have a whole separate bucket just for that. So what type of buckets do you have, Rob?
I've got a couple different ones. You bring up a good point I wanted to throw out is, we do preach a lot about save, invest. It is good to treat yourself from time to time. If you use the bucket system and say, okay, as long as I'm getting this bucket filled up for my long-term goal, and I'm getting this bucket filled up for my mid-range goal, you can still allocate some money to reward yourself. I'm a fan of that. My buckets are basically retirement first, because as I'm getting closer to retirement than, say some of our clients. So that bucket has got to be hit hard. Second one is the emergency or easily accessible assets. That is something that I don't want to have to raid my retirement plan if I've got an emergency. I want to have that bucket designed for that. And then I like to reward myself. I've got a bucket I kind of call my fun activities bucket, in which I'm saving up for vacations, try to take a beach vacation or something like that. I want that bucket to have its own little goal and its own little amount. I do, in that fun bucket, I like cars, and so I'm certainly going to want to allocate that. And then I own a motorcycle, and like every guy that owns a motorcycle, you're always looking for the next bike, a little bigger, a little faster. So I got my bucket system designed like that.
Well, it sounds like you definitely have your buckets under control, Rob.
I hope so.
Speaking of control, next in our acronym of savings, we're to V, which is value discipline, prioritizing needs over wants.
Okay, so let's talk about the definition of a need and the definition of a want. So a need, that is something required because it's essential. It's very important. You need that. That is a must. Now, wants are a little bit different. That's something that you more desire, something you want to possess, something you want to have, something you wish for, but it's not something you have to have. It's not a need. So you're going to want to focus on your long-term needs and not be swayed by your short-term wants. And that's what we kind of think you want to keep those in mind, the difference between a need and a want, and make sure that you're fulfilling the needs first before you get swayed by the wants. The way I kind of do this is I keep a couple of wish lists. Like I've always got my eye on something, and even when I go to the grocery store, I'll see something. I go, that looks like that would be fun to eat. That looks good. Oh, I want to buy that. I keep a grocery list, and when I go to the grocery store, I only buy what's on that grocery list.
What if something's BOGO though?
Well, if it's...
Are you allowed to buy something if it's BOGO?
I can justify that because if it's on my list, I didn't say how much of it I was going to get. So if it's, if I splurge and I'm going to get some granola bars and it's 2 for 1, I need the granola bars. That's a need. And so thus it's good for me to get twice as many for the same price. So good point, but that's the way I would run it. But it keeps me from doing an impulse buy. I typically do a grocery store run after work, so I'm kind of hungry. I know I'm going to go home. It's getting ready for dinner, and I'm like, oh, well, that looks really easy to make, and that looks good. And that looks good. That looks good. If it's not on my grocery list, I won't buy it on that trip. Now, when I get home, I'll put it on the grocery list, and if it stays there long enough, I might purchase it the next time. I do the same thing with other items. I have an Amazon wish list, and I throw all kinds of stuff on there, and they come and they go based on using common sense. And so I will, if I think, hey, I need that pillow or I want that motorcycle accessory, I'll put it on my Amazon wish list. If it stays there for a while, And through thick and thin, I can justify that, yes, that's something I really want. My needs have been met. My bucket system's in place. Then and only then will I make that purchase. So it helps me to avoid impulse purchases.
Your willpower it amazes me. I wish I could be that good when I go shopping, both grocery store or not.
No, it's, and I talk a good story. If you looked at my cabinet, you'd be like, that looks like a want, not a need. We will be right back after this break, continue on with Dollars and Cents, and talk a little bit more about how we've taken the word savings and utilized it to help you with your savings. We're talking about the difference between wants and needs and how kind of understanding which is more important and which can be pushed off to the side should help you keep track on and having a successful savings plan. We're going to switch to the next letter, keeping in line with this acronym. Christina, what do we have next?
So next is investing wisely in our savings acronym I. Choose appropriate vehicles for growth.
All right, so I view this as kind of three things. We talk about the bucket system. It's similar to this. The first thing, your vehicle for growth, if you're doing retirement, that's long-term, and that's tax deferred, and that's designed to not be used until you hit retirement age. So that's not something you want to throw money in and pull it out before, definitely not before age 59 and a half, but really you want it to last you until you actually start retirement. That kind of a vehicle is going to be your 401k at work, maybe a traditional IRA, or if you're a fan of the Roth and how that works, that might be an appropriate vehicle for retirement. Other option, if you're doing something like buying a house, that's not something that you're going to start putting money in and you're never going to touch it until you get, after 59 and a half. That's something you're going to be buying sooner. So that bucket or that vehicle has got to be a little bit different. That's a non-retirement plan. So it's taxed a little bit different. It's funded a little bit different. You may not want it to be pure growth. As you get close to the house purchase, you'll kind of change your allocation. Other option that's a vehicle for growth is an emergency fund, which really isn't for growth. That's something that you might not even invest. You might go with a traditional savings, short-term CD, maybe a money market that's provided by the mutual fund companies. That's different. That's something you need to be able to tap into at a moment's notice.
And I think allocation is another important factor when it comes into the appropriate vehicles for the growth of your savings plan. You want to make sure that the fund is invested in the type of investment that is invested in fits the needs of the investment itself. So for example, your retirement funds might be invested in something that's more aggressive because those funds are going to be invested for a longer period of time. So you can absorb the volatility much better, whereas maybe you have a house fund and it's going to have a much shorter time horizon. So those assets you may not want to put in such an aggressive investment. And then you also have your savings. The savings or the emergency fund is going to more come into play where that might be in a money market or high yield savings account because those funds are probably going to need to be more fluid. You're using them for emergencies or travel or whatever case your savings fund is for.
Sure, makes sense. So moving along with savings, we're going to go to the next one. What would that be?
Our next letter is N in the savings acronym, and it's nurture your habits, build long-term financial behaviors.
All right, so we do know that many of us spend too much money on things we really do not necessarily need, usually due to trying to save time or maybe making an impulse purchase. An example of that could be eating out. It's easier just to go someplace and grab some food from a restaurant versus cooking at home, but it could be more expensive. Maybe it's the type of car or clothes or the type of vacation that you take. It's very easy to get carried away with worrying about your image or what car do I drive, what will people think. Sometimes you want to be more practical if you're trying to build long-term financial behaviors.
That's right, Rob. It's very important to live within your means and not overspend. And I don't know if sometimes people even realize what it means to live within your means. One of the key factors is not creating unnecessary debt for yourself and monitoring that level of debt. You want to avoid using credit cards at all costs because the interest rates that they charge is astronomical and they make it nearly impossible to pay off. So, for example, if every month you're putting money on your credit card to go out to eat or to have all those Amazon purchases, then you're not living within your means because you're spending more each month than you are bringing in. So somewhere along the line, you need to back off. Maybe you don't get that coffee in the morning. Maybe you start making your own coffee, or maybe you start bringing your lunch, or you only go out to eat once a week or no times a week, depending on how much you might be overindulging.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. Debt can be an issue. It can really kind of jam up your successful savings plan. I mean, if you can avoid interest from previous debt, surely going to save you some money as you head into retirement.
Honestly, I look at interest as such a waste of money. That is not what I want to be spending my money on. There's so many other things. If you could get it under control and, actually live within your means, you just don't have to waste your money on something needless as interest.
That's a good point.
So our next letter is G in our savings acronym, and it's guard against risk, to properly allocate your assets in different savings categories.
All right, so some of the things that we think about allocation-wise when we're going to guard against risk is maintaining emergency funds so that you're not suddenly going to have an emergency and then you got to tap into your retirement plan, maybe pay a penalty, or you start having to take money out of your longer-term house purchase, and that kind of affects that plan when you thought you were going to purchase some property. Utilize the bucket system. Each bucket has a specific goal and specific type of investments. You always want to keep a balance between liquidity and growth. So that's that emergency fund versus the longer term goals. You want to guard against risk in areas that are not long term related, which is again that money market or savings. That particular bucket has a need to kind of, it's not necessarily going to be a large bucket, but it's something you can tap into pretty quickly.
And you want to make sure you keep monitoring your allocation on your retirement plans, 401ks, any long-term assets that are invested over time to make sure they're still matching your current goals. Keep in mind, a retirement account, for example, should be in existence for 30 to 40 years. So over time, what's going to happen is your growth funds are going to grow at a quicker rate than a bond fund or a balance fund would. So you want to reallocate those to get back to your original allocation to make sure you're staying in line with where you want to be invested. As well as you age, your aggressiveness may change over time. So you may want to start backing that up. And then last but not least, we have S. The last S, for just stop spending.
Yes, I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, you can save money all day long and save large amounts, but if you continue to then spend that money you've saved, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're not really getting that money saved for the long-term goals that you put in place. So we always say, just don't spend. I mean, if you stick to your bucket system, if you think about what your budget was and then you implement it as you go into savings, it'll make it a little smoother. It seems so simple to say, hey, just spend less, but that usually is the most complicated issue that we see. We'll have clients and prospects come to us and they've made their budget, they know how much they're going to save, we agree that's a perfect plan, and then every month somebody calls. Oh, this occurred. Oh, I'm doing this. Oh, yeah, my child needed this. And suddenly they're making extra withdrawals. That's immediately going to have an effect on your savings, certainly going to have an effect on your budget. So, what do you think? Which one do you think is the most important?
I would say automating your savings, because I think that's the hardest part. Most people don't see savings as a priority. So if you make it a bill or somehow set up an auto payment, it just goes much smoother. I know it has for me, and I even know better. It's what I do. But making it that automatic payment, making it a monthly bill for myself, definitely helps me save more.
I have to agree, because if it's automated, it just happens. I don't have to make a decision. I can't change my mind. I don't have the ability to say, well, let me see what happens at the end of the month, how much I actually put in. It just goes. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, I am build that into my budget at the very top, and now my savings is growing and I'm sticking to my bucket system. What we feel like is if you stay the course and continue to put value on your discipline and nurture these habits that we're talking about, you will have a successful savings plan. So let's just summarize. We took the word savings as an acronym. We said, okay, S stands for stay the course. A stands for automate your contributions. V stands for put a value on discipline when you're investing. The letter I stood for invest wisely. N was nurture positive habits. G, guard against risk. And S, stop spending, stop spending. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of Dollars and Cents. Joel Garris will be back next week to host next week's episode. If you like what you heard, certainly reach out to us. You can go to our website, Nelson Financial Planning. There's a contact us form. Fill out the information. We'll reach out to you. Or call our number, 407-629-6477. We have live people answering the phone. We'll answer your questions. And as you know, first meeting is always no cost, and we have no account minimums because we want everybody to have access to a wonderful, successful investing plan. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you next week.